Hi, I'm Lynn Cornell, and welcome to Journey Through the Bible Verse by Verse. Grab your Bibles and follow along as we study through each book of the Bible, verse by verse and chapter by chapter. Keep in mind that I am using the Holman Christian Standard Bible, so if you're reading from a different Bible translation, the read will be different, but the message will be the same. We're going to continue in our study through the Gospel of Matthew, and we're in chapter 7. And again, just to keep in mind, we are studying chapters 5, 6, and 7 is the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had a large crowd of people have gathered around Jesus, some of whom he has healed of their diseases and sickness. Some he has cast devils out, so he has set them free. And so they're listening and they're hearing his teaching. But they've also gathered in the sense that they're following him. And so Jesus is telling them what his requirements for being his disciples. He's also telling them what is true righteousness, not the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. And so he's been contrasting the two. Now verse 1 says, "Do not judge so that you won't be judged. For with the judgment you use, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but don't notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and look, there's a log in your eye? Hypocrite, first take the log out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." Now, this term, do not judge, is probably one of the most misused, misapplied statements in the Bible, mostly used as a defense mechanism. You know, that if you point out to someone their wrongdoing, they immediately say, don't judge me. Oh, don't judge me. Now, that's not what Jesus meant. When he's saying here, don't judge, he is not saying that you cannot point out someone's fault. However, he is telling us the perspective we should have. Now, another thing about in terms of judging, because we ought to judge, and further down in this chapter, he's going to actually tell us how to judge, or tell us what to judge. So what does he mean here? And he's going to tell us in a moment. Actually, I just read it, but he's going to tell us in a moment. But what he's, in a sense, saying is that, okay, if I'm going to recognize and point out someone's fault, don't be a hypocrite. Don't say, you shouldn't steal while you're stealing. Don't say you shouldn't lie when you're lying. In fact, notice he said, what is kind of course, interesting, comical here, is that you're good at seeing the tiny speck in someone's eye, but you don't recognize the big log hanging out of your own eye. I think there's some spiritual significance to what he's saying here. He's just not only being hyperbole, he's speaking hyperbole right here and being comical, but I think the analogy is also fitting in this way. While there are people who make it their business of always pointing out someone's fault, someone's shortcomings, and never their own, that's what he's talking about. That's what makes him a hypocrite. That you will spend, if you are honest and if you are sincere, that you're going to spend 99% of your time and energy dealing with removing the log from your own eye. And I found that's true. Again, doesn't mean that you can't point out someone's fault. But I think that the perspective that you should have in pointing out someone's fault is also recognizing your own. See, as I said before, don't tell someone, don't lie when you lie yourself. See, there was a pastor who once said, sin is what you do and I don't. And what he meant by that is it's so easy for us to point out someone else's sins while certainly neglecting ours. So, that is so true. Verse 6, don't give what is holy to dogs and toss your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under feet, turn and tear you into pieces. Now, I think this is a kind of a good spiritual principle right here, because notice he uses the term dogs, and pigs. And that signifies the sort of nature of a person, the nature of the ungodly. So he's not talking about trying to reach people, but he's talking about dealing with them only as, in terms of their nature, a dog and a pig, or a spiritually lacking person, a sinner, an ungodly person. So that's what he means by that. Don't give what is holy to dogs. In other words, you witness to them. You proclaim the gospel to them. That's what he meant by that. But don't give what is holy to them, because they're going to act like dogs and pigs, by the way. Verse 7, keep asking and it will be given to you. Keep searching and you will find. Keep knocking and the door will be open. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who searches finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be open. What man among you? Now, again, keep in mind when you see these kinds of statements here, that he's referring to, he's speaking generically, or speaking in a general sense. In other words, keep seeking, be knocking. What he's not saying is that whatever you seek for, you're going to find. All right? Well, that's not what he's saying. So keep this in a general sense, in a general application here. I mean, if that was the case, I'd be a millionaire right now. That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean by that. If I got everything I sought for, I'd be a millionaire. All right, verse 9. What man among you, if his son asks him for bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, he will give him a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you want others to do for you, do also the same for them, for this is the law and the prophets. All right. Again, in the sense of prayer, in the sense of our life, notice he says, again, I think one of the things here, the confidence of knowing that God has our best interest for us. Knowing that God has our best interest for us. So, if I'm asking God for food, he's not going to give me poison. And I think there's a lot of other applications for this too, by the way. A whole lot of applications. And I also think we can also say this. Let's sort of reverse it. When I'm not asking, but I don't know what's happening to me, in a sense, I know it's not God. That God is giving me good, that God is doing good for me. Okay? That God is not, people ask this question, where is God when tragedy hits? Well, I know it's not God when tragedy hits. Now, verse 13, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who's going to go through it. How narrow is the gate and difficult the road that leads to life, and few find it. Now, this is one, again, kind of a very pointed saying that Jesus is saying right here. Notice this. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. Many are going down that broad way. But narrow is the gate. It's a difficult the road that leads to life, and few that find it. Notice the contrast. Broad is the way for destruction, few that find life. And so he says, enter the narrow gate. Now, what is that gate? Of course, it's Jesus. There is only one person who's provided salvation for us, and that is Jesus. Enter through the narrow gate. Now, again, remember, he's talking to this massive crowd right here. Okay, he's talking to this massive crowd. He's on the probably open air field, a hillside. So he's telling them, enter through the narrow gate. All right. I'm going to pick up at verse 15 in the next video. So I'll see you then.